Are we really, truly wired to be selfish? It's one of those huge questions about who we are as people. Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into some pretty fascinating research that flips a long-held belief about human nature right on its head. And honestly, it might just change how you see the world around you.
We've all heard this argument a million times, right? That deep down, when it really comes down to it, we're all just looking out for number one. That when the chips are down, we will always choose what's best for ourselves, even if it means someone else has to lose out.
There's even a famous model for this in game theory, called the prisoner's dilemma. The setup's pretty simple. Imagine two partners in crime get caught, and the cops separate them. If you snitch on your partner and they stay quiet, you walk free. If you both stay quiet, you both get a slap on the wrist. But if you both betray each other, you both go down for a long time. And according to cold, hard logic, the most rational choice is always to betray your partner.
So this classic puzzle, it creates this really powerful myth that pure, calculating self-interest is just the way we're built to operate. But is it? Really? Let's see what happens when we throw a very human element into this whole equation.
This brings us right to our first big piece of evidence, which completely challenges this myth using something that people usually just dismiss as, well, cheap talk.
That is the exact question a group of researchers at Ohio State University wanted to answer. So they ran a version of the prisoner's dilemma, but they added one simple little twist. They gave the players a chat box. They could just talk before they made their final decision. Now, this kind of non-binding chat is often called cheap talk, but let me tell you, its effect was anything but cheap. And here it is, the proof right on the screen. The blue line, that shows cooperation when people can't communicate. It's pretty low and it drops off fast. But just look at that red line. That's what happens when people can talk. Cooperation just soars. The difference is absolutely staggering. So just how big was that jump? Well, for individuals playing the game, just letting them talk to each other led to a 70.6 percentage point increase in cooperation in the very first round. It turns out that just being able to coordinate and build a tiny bit of trust completely flips the script on what's supposed to be the rational choice to betray.
So, what on earth were they talking about in these chats? You might think it was all threats and intimidation, but it wasn't. When researchers actually analyzed the conversations, they found people were almost entirely focused on working together for mutual gain, talking about what was fair, and trying to figure out a way they could both come out ahead.
And you can see right here from the actual chat logs just how informal and direct it was. This isn't some complex negotiation. It's a simple human appeal to trust and, shared success. Hey, let's work together, and we can both win. And that message, it's incredibly powerful.
Okay, but like any good story, there's a little bit of a wrinkle here. The researchers also wanted to see what would happen if you swapped out the individuals for two-person teams.
And they found something they call the discontinuity effect. Now, communication still boosted cooperation, for sure, but teams behave more rationally in that classic cold-hearted economic sense. They were quicker to betray their opponents as the game was ending, and they even showed more distrust in their chats right from the start. It kind of seems like group dynamics can bring out our more competitive, maybe even more cynical side. Okay, so communication is clearly a cooperation superpower. But what about all those situations where we can't talk, and there's really no obvious immediate benefit to being fair? Well, this brings us to another huge piece of the puzzle, our deep instinct to enforce social rules.
Seriously, think about it for a second. Why do we bother to leave a tip for a server in a city we know we're never going to visit again? Or why do we get so mad when we see a complete stranger being treated unfairly? Well, a really important study from the University of Zurich gets right to the heart of this powerful and maybe uniquely human drive we have. So these researchers in Zurich, they set up this brilliant experiment. They created a game where one person could choose to act unfairly toward another. But then they added a third person, an observer, who had no skin in the game. Their own money wasn't at stake at all, but they had the option to punish the player who was being unfair. And what they found was just remarkable. Almost two-thirds, nearly 66% of these neutral third-party observers chose to step in and punish someone for being unfair to a total stranger. They had absolutely no horse in the race, but they still intervened. And here's the real kicker. This is the most important part. Punishing that unfair player, it wasn't free. The observers had to spend their own money to do it. This just goes to show we have an incredibly strong, maybe even innate, sense of fairness. So strong that we're actually willing to pay a personal cost just to enforce it, even on behalf of someone we've never met. So what does this all mean when we put it all together? Well, it points to a totally new, and I think a much more optimistic, way of understanding how human society actually works. When you put these two studies side by side, what you see are two foundational pillars that hold up all of human cooperation. First, we use communication. We talk to build trust and line up our goals. And second, we have this built-in drive to enforce fairness by punishing rule breakers, which is what keeps the whole system from falling apart.
So that whole idea that we're all just selfishly out for ourselves, it's pretty much a myth. The reality is so much more complex, and frankly, way more interesting. Our entire civilization, from tiny office teams all the way up to global economies, is built on this incredible architecture of cooperation, held up by our ability to talk, our capacity for trust, and this deep-seated, shared commitment to fairness.
This explains so much, right? Everything from office politics to huge international treaties. It's like the invisible glue that holds our world together. And it leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If something as simple as a chat box and a basic instinct for justice are this powerful, where else are these hidden forces quietly shaping your own life?